this research has recommendations, and some of these recommendations are for Gambia civil society to brainstorm to see how feasible and achievable it is in our Gambian context as well. So it will take the form of a plenary session. We will be in groups of us, and we will discuss and brainstorm in line with the recommendations that are projected here today. So like I said, this survey is done over 120 countries, Gambia inclusive, and this report is specific to Gambia. This is the second time we are convening this, and the first time was only with civil society. But this time around, it's a multi-stakeholder dialogue because we have the National Audit Office with us. We've also invited the Ministry of Health, who are on their way. We also have the FPA committee, but unfortunately they could not make it because Parliament is not sitting and most of them are not around in the country. These are the institutions we've invited, so we can also hear from government perspective, and government can equally hear from civil society perspective, so we can have a common understanding. Thank you very much for coming, like I said, and I'll hand over the baton to Mar. Mar will do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fanta. And hello to everyone. And thank you for being patient. We were meant to start the program at 9:30, but we had to wait for to actually have more people turn out, while we're also expecting government officials to be here. So those the delay. But without wasting much time, we were supposed to discuss about the impact of COVID-19 on our work, but I would just first maybe throw it this way to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the Gambia's budget. Maybe if I can hear just 1 or 2, 3 comments just to get a perspective, then I can get into the presentation. What have you felt during the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it has had on the country's economy, or more specifically on the budget? Just some ideas, yes. MS.
Yeah. I think COVID-19 has hampered one of the most important sector in our economy, which is okay. Yeah, looking at the COVID-19, which is coronavirus, it has hampered, one of the biggest sector of our economy. If you look at tourism, according to statistics, it constitutes 22% of our GDP. Not only our national economy, but also individual economy, because according to the statistics, the projection, almost more than 20 billion has been lost in that sector, and many are rendered jobless. If you also look at the business sector, I think GCCI did an assessment in the early days of COVID-19 in the country, where they assessed 300 business, both in the formal and the informal sector. So you can see that many of those businesses who were just coming up, SMEs, are rendered, they cannot, continue with their business because of COVID-19. So many are rendered jobless, many businesses has gone down, and remember, if businesses goes down, obviously it will reflect on our national budget, because government gets money from tax, and tax revenue is one of the biggest revenue in the budget of the budget. So this is definitely a problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving that perspective. The second question, and this is general. Do you feel there has been transparency in the management of COVID-19 funds? Any?
Give it a chance.
Okay.
So actually, with regards to whether there is transparency on the way government is spending on the issue of COVID-19. As a journalist, I believe the government, that's the part that the government is really not doing much, because we have seen so many reports being, put out there by the media with regards to some of the issues that the government is not doing well. We've seen the Malagan story that reveals government lack of breakdown of the COVID-19 funds. So I don't think there is transparency on the side of the government, and this is something that is really, draining our country in terms of how government is responding to issues of COVID-19, but also how the government also is responding to what the citizens are asking with regards to the funds that are being used to fight COVID-19. So on this side of the government, there is total lack of transparency, and I believe it's high time government come out and tell us how exactly the money are being spent on issues of COVID-19, because still now, these are questions that remains unanswered. So to my side, there is no transparency. Thank you.
Who agrees with the gentleman that there has been limited transparency? Okay. The mic over there.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Buba Jata, working at GBPA, Gambia Public Procurement Authority. And I'm thanking you guys for inviting GBPA to this noble occasion. GBPA as an authority responsible to regulate all public procurements in this country. We have a sitting at the COVID-19 committee. However, I am privy to say some of these things right now. As far as I am concerned and GBPA is concerned, there is transparency in COVID-19 procurements, because that's the area that I can talk of. I and my colleague here, we sit in so many committees to make sure that whatever Minister of Health they are procuring is in line with procurement laws. However, those laws, sometimes we crash with them, some transactions we even disapproved, some, of course, we approve in line with the law. So as far as GBPA is concerned, COVID-19 procurement transactions, of course, are transparent. I am saying it because we are in the committee. I remember some months ago, when COVID was at the peak level, there is this drug that is called heparin. Doctors realized that if they give that drugs to the COVID-19 patient, they improved. So of course they suggest that to the committee, what can we do so that you can have that drugs in bulk? GPA give immediate approval to procure those drugs immediately, because if patients take that drug, you will recover very fast. So, and then lot of technical advice that we are giving to the committee to make sure that, of course, our COVID-19 rate in terms of procurements, of course, at fast rate. So as far as I'm concerned, I can say that, of course, COVID-19 procurements are transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have different perspectives, both from the media and in that of the government level. And then my presentation we will come to that in detail. So can you just make it
just briefly? I think definitely the government transparency with regards to government is very limited. That is the fact. Even the National Assembly is struggling to get adequate information with regards to COVID-19. This is a household issue that has been known, is public. So I think COVID-19, the transparency has to go beyond just telling us that you spent 500 million. How much do you you bought 5 ambulances, this and that, but how much is going to each ambulance? How much is going to quarantine? How much is going to drugs? These are people's money. My money, your money is coming from taxpayers. So this is the reality. It's inadequate. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think this was helpful because the reason why we wanted to do this is to get to understand how to call it, the different perspectives. The government has come with its perspective, the same thing with that of the civil society and the media. So what I'm going to do, for some of you might have seen this presentation before somewhere in July 17 when we did this workshop with civil society. But this time around it was meant to be a broader conversation with government officials. I'm happy that the National Audit Office through Mr. Jain are represented here. They're always available in terms of this kind of conversation. That shows how committed each office in terms of budget accountability. And then also comment the GPA also attending the club actually decided not to. Like Fanta said, we were expected to have the National Assembly, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, they could not attend. And the same thing with Ministry of Health as well, because they are a key stakeholder in this conversation. And they also sit in these COVID-19 committees. So it would have been great for them also to be here as well. This same thing also applies with the Ministry of Finance. But the most important thing is we're here, and also happy that the media is here. That will help disseminate the information, because the purpose was when the government were here, we do the presentation, identify where their weaknesses are in terms of COVID-19 activities, especially related to finance, and we have to facilitate the conversation regarding how we can support the government by coming up with technical solutions to their current predicament. But this also doesn't stop us, the civil society and media, towards our meaningful engagement with government officials in fostering government accountability or transparency. Because at the end of the day, if there is transparency, all of us wins. The government wins, we also win. So I'm just going to go straight and do this presentation. Musa, I am not tech savvy, so I don't know. Okay. Okay. So, like Fanta said, and then also I just wanted to raise that the International Budget Partnership, which is IBP, that is based in Washington, D.C., they were expecting to be part of this, but right now it is very early at their end. But they will subsequently join the conversation. So I'm going to do this presentation on their behalf, so we get to understand why we talk about budget and what the Open Budget Survey is all about. So why budget? Why do we have to discuss about budget? Does it even matter at all? Right? We see government get to the parliament, they discuss, and the budget is approved, there's expenditure. Later on we complain about fraud, the issue of fraud, high level of mismanagement and spending into areas that are not priorities for citizens. Do we care about all of this? And do we even care about, how to call it, the budget that is being formulated from the executive level? So I will get into that and then explain why budget really matters. It is always said that government will always say, we prioritize this, we're going to support this, we're going to do this, theoretically. But for us, we will say, don't tell us what you value. Show us your budget. If you bring the national budget to us, we will tell you what you value. If in the national budget you have high, should I say, allocation in the area of health, we will know that you value health. The same thing for agriculture, the same thing for health. If you always keep saying that youth empowerment, we are empowering the youth, show us the budget and tell us how much you've allocated for youth empowerment. Then we will justify it with that. So the budget speaks a lot about what government values. If government values procurement of cars, then we will justify their actions with the budget, that they value procurement of cars than that of youth empowerment. So the budget gives us that leverage for us to be able to justify what government really prioritizes against citizen priorities. So the budget actually shows us spending with funds, public services that benefit citizens. So you have the budget, and this budget expenditure goes into public services. When we talk about agriculture, mechanizing agriculture, and then also boosting the economy, and also expanding the tourism sector and the likes. At the end of the day, what happens is when we have all these public services that we benefit, the citizens, it actually comes from the budget, goes to these public service institutions, then we, the citizens, end up benefiting from it. So one way or the other, we are always impacted with the national budget. So that's the reason why we must have a say about our budget and how the budget should be formed and what should be prioritized in the budget. And you will see how you actually contribute into the budget. Because like I said, if you have the national budget spent into public services, that benefits you. What forms the budget again? It goes into taxes that citizens pay. And those taxes are what forms revenue. And those revenue is what the government converts into other expenditures with other multilateral and bilateral government supports. So you have tax revenue and what we call non-tax revenue plus project programs that is supported by, like I said, government partners. So the taxes that you pay, some of you are employed, and then every month you pay your payee at GRA. GRA calculates the total amount of revenue that they have collected, and it goes to the government funds. And part of those funds is what is used to actually fund public services and the like. So if you're complaining of roads, bathrooms, network, electricity, and the likes, let's look at the budget and then see what government is doing in regards to solving those issues. So the question again, why budget? Citizens are a vital piece of the cycle, and the people have the right to know how the government is spending the people's money, because the taxes we pay forms the revenue which goes into the budget. What government is raising is they are raising it in the name of the people, because at the end of the day, there's a contract between the Gambia and the donor. So the Gambia is formed by Gambians. So that money is raised, like they say, government is a representative institution of the people. That's why you elect them every 5 years to represent your needs and priorities. So when they raise money, that money is for you. So that money actually have to be spent in a way that you, the citizens, should benefit, but most importantly as well, know how that money is expended. So this is a quote from a representative from Nigerian smallholder women. So basically what she's actually saying is that previously they do not value budget. They think it's just a government matter. You know, government goes, prepares, bring some bulky papers, they discuss, talk about figures that is not fathomable to the people, and that's it. But later on, after they started organizing themselves and understanding public policy and how it impacts their work as smallholder women farmers, they get to understand the impact that the budget has on them. So if you're complaining of poverty, we go back to the budget. Like I said, if government is saying that we are committed towards reducing poverty, let's go back to the budget and see how government is putting money to curb poverty. So they realized that this is actually impacting their lives. So as a result, they started going ahead. You don't really need to be a budget expert. You don't need to be a government official. All that you have to do is to care about your life and the life of your community, and how government is working towards addressing some of the predicaments that you are, or your community is going through. That cannot be solved outside the budget. Anything that the government is expending has to be legislated. That's why you have appropriation bill. Then it goes to parliament, they vote, go do all the amendments, and it becomes a law. So the money that government is spending, it is law abiding. It's backed by law. So like I said, you don't really need to be an expert. Just be a concerned citizen and engage your parliament representative effectively in making sure the budget reflects or addresses your needs. So you can see that during this COVID-19 period, governments all around the world have been responding to the virus and its economic fallout through its public or fiscal policies. And you know, budget is key to responding to and recovering from COVID-19. Transparency, public engagement, and strong oversight are important during normal budget process, but most importantly, during crisis. We heard about from the media and civil society when I asked the question if there is transparency on COVID-19 funds. And before COVID-19 as well, there has been reports from media and civil society advocating for government fiscal transparency. When we were advocating for that, the advocacy has to be referral. Now, I think we need more advocacies right now than ever in terms of budget transparency because of the crisis. Because there has been a lot of reallocations of budget funds that were meant to, that are meant to be spent on COVID-19 activities. Now, accountability. Accountability comes in different forms. But here we're talking more on budget accountability. And it comes both in informal processes and other formal processes, in which the government is held responsible for their stewardship of the people's money, which is the budget. So here we will talk about the pillars that form budget transparency or budget accountability here. So there are three fundamental pillars that hold budget accountability, and that's transparency, oversight, and I'm happy that the National Audit Office is here because they play a key role on budget oversight, and public participation. How do we participate in the process? But most importantly, you cannot be able to hold government accountable if you do not participate in the process. You must know you must have information, verifiable information, fact-based information that you can use to hold government accountable. So, and I will talk about these three pillars in detail. So first, the issue of transparency. And transparency here means that we should have access to comprehensive, timely budget information, documents and data throughout the budget cycle. When we talk about budget transparency, and then we say, okay, government say we spend this and we have the records. Fine, the record is there for the National Audit Office to access and audit. But how are those records accessible to the people? Because if you go on social media today, most of the discussion that you will see is on national matters. When there are information that are readily available on government websites, those information could be used by media and civil society to hold government accountable. Today, if you go on government websites to look for COVID-19 expenditure, GPPA have mentioned that they have those records. If you go on their website, you will get to see awards, contracts that have been awarded to service providers or suppliers. That information is readily available, and it's one step towards transparency. But if you go beyond that, you want to get to understand what has been the contract that has been signed between the service provider and the government. Then you get into details. So transparency has to be beyond just the information being published. The core information has to be readily available. And public availability here means anywhere you are in the world, you can have access to that document. You don't need to walk to GPPA's website or Minister of Finance website or Minister of Health office or GPPA's office. Wherever you are, you can actually sit at your convenience and then download the report and use that information for government accountability. That's how it's done, and that's what is internationally recommended. But seeing the GPPA publishing that information is actually one step towards making sure that we have a more transparent information on COVID-19 activities, which is commendable. Oversight. So formal budget oversight occurs through the legislature and that of the Supreme Audit Institution. In our case, the Supreme Audit Institution is that of the National Audit Office. So every end of fiscal year, and who knows when our fiscal year starts?
January. January 1st.
MS, I'll ask someone else. Yeah, you and Flex, yeah. Who knows when our fiscal year starts? January? January 1st, that's correct. And then someone, when does it end? Not you again. When does the fiscal year end? Our fiscal year starts from January 1st. She answered. MS, can you help us when it ends?
The end of December.
December 31st. 31st December. So our budget starts from January 1st to December 31st. In other countries, it starts from June, August, and the likes. So our case is just like the fiscal year. I mean, it's just like the annual calendar year. From January 1st, that's when the government will start expending money. So that's the reason why before January 1st, you have the budget speech, you have the laying of the executive budget proposal, the parliament debates it, they approve it before December because that's what the law says. So that's the reason why I said this budget that is being prepared is a law. And after it has been expended, do the government just go sit? No. So that's the reason why the law, the 1997 Constitution, creates the National Audit Office as an oversight body that will monitor how government has been spending the people's money. And if you go to the NOS website, one of the things that really stood out for me is the word helping government to spend wisely. So when they audit the government, they identify the weaknesses. And if there is any case of fraud, they detect it. So having a strong oversight institution is important in making sure there is government accountability. But also, we have the National Assembly. The National Assembly through, let's say, the FPAC, they also do budget scrutiny. And the plenary as well also do budget scrutiny. And sometimes you can see them summoning government institutions and asking them questions regarding the budget for them to answer. So this is really fundamental. It is core in our life. So whether we know it or not, the budget in one way or the other make us to be where we are. If we are a poor country, then our budget has an impact to it. How much money is going into personal emoluments versus development. So these are things that we need to really put into consideration. Public participation. This is the third pillar of budget accountability. First, I talk about transparency. If there's transparency, we access those information, we can hold government accountable regarding how they spend people's money. Talk about budget oversight, the National Audit Office, and then that of the National Assembly's role in ensuring that there is budget accountability. But also the public, and this is where we come as citizens. Be civil society, media, any ordinary citizens should have the opportunity to participate in the formulation process of the budget. And if there is the opportunity, the presence of opportunities and mechanisms for us, the citizens, to be involved directly in budget discussions throughout the budget cycle, then we get to understand the basic information. That is how the budget is being prepared. And this, I have to call it secondary, so like I say, information, we will get to understand how much is allocated. Then the more we become conversant with these issues, the more we can use this information and keep asking government questions. Do you even know that asking questions also begs for accountability? If you ask questions, government comes and responds, they have been accountable to you. How much have you spent on COVID-19 funds? You deserve to know. But not only the total amount, but the core information regarding where the money went. So these are the three pillars of budget accountability. So this is not going to be a very long, hardcore discussion. It's going to be very short. So please bear with me, and I would like it to be interactive when we get to the Q&A session. So the Open Budget Survey, like Fanta explained, is an initiative of the International Budget Partnership, and it was developed 15 years ago. So in 2018, we partnered with the IBP. So Open Budget Survey is under the International Budget Partnership. So it is just an initiative under IBP. So we partnered with IBP to include Gambia in the Open Budget Survey because we realized that 115 countries were being assessed in terms of how transparent, how accountable, and the opportunity for public participations are in their countries. And they are scored, and later after they see their score, they work towards scoring better. And in scoring better, they become more transparent, they become more accountable. So we said this is also, how to call it, the opportunity for Gambia to be part of it. So we included Gambia, and we were assessed, Gambia was assessed in the 2019 Open Budget Survey, the results were out, and then we've also been assessed for 2020, and the report will be out 2021, the report will be out April 2022. But, how to call it, this time around, we did what we call rapid COVID-19 assessment. When COVID-19 hits and we realized governments were actually reallocating funds, the IBP came up with the rapid COVID-19 assessment, and it was done in 120 countries, in which Gambia is a part of. So the Open Budget Survey looks at 3 areas, like I said, transparency, public participation, and oversight. So, the OBS is based on widely accepted international budget practices from the IMF, the OECD, Intosai, which I believe NAO is part of, and GIF, which is the Global Institute for Fiscal Transparency. And the survey is actually fact-based assessment. It is not opinion-based. It's not like we ask, have the government actually published monthly budget expenditure? And then you say, yes. And then we're going to ask you, where is the evidence? You need to give us an evidence that that particular information is readily available on government website. If it's internally available, then we don't consider that to be publicly available. Like I said, public availability of government information means it has to be accessible wherever you are. And the OBS is also comparable across time and between countries. So which means for the 2019 Open Budget Survey for Gambia, we were able to track the government's performance. Last survey and then this survey. And then get to understand the, how the graph is going. If the government performed badly in the past survey and they started going up, meaning there is level of improvement that is done by the government. But if it keeps going down, then there is a problem. And with this data, we the civil society can actually use them and start getting to understand where the problem is and meaningfully engage government to solving those problems. But why do we have to conduct this Open Budget Survey? And what's the need? How and who will use this particular information? First, government. It would have been great to have more government institutions, but yet still, we have a very key government institution that is present. So the government can actually use the Open Budget Survey to understand where their weaknesses are. Government do not have the time to assess themselves, come up with recommendations why there are other key areas that are pending. So, and then if government assess themselves, then we will always be doubtful whether the information is, how to call it, representing the views of, or should I say, it is fact-based. But with the Open Budget Survey, the reason why it is done by a civil society or an individual researcher is because we want to get an independent citizen perspective. Because you cannot be an auditor and audit yourself. Even National Audit Office, they are an audit institution, but they don't audit themselves. They are audited by an external audit firm. So it's like us also auditing the government, but here the audit means we are also identifying where your weaknesses are and then come with recommendations to tell you this is what you should do to improve. And the government have been very responsive on that, to be honest. With all the challenges, they have been cooperative with us, the civil society organization, in becoming more transparent. Though there are some challenges, but there are level of improvement that have been registered. The media. Us, the media, I'm not in the media, but I can just say us, the media, because we all into it together, right? And the media can actually use this information for publicity and also conduct investigative journalism into these areas and also raise awareness regarding the government lowlights and highlights in terms of budget transparency and accountability. Development partners, government, so this is one other thing that we need to understand. Development partners are very smart. They sometimes give budget support to governments based on what we call KPIs. Do you know what KPI is? KPI means key performance indicators. They look at government performance in terms of their budget transparency. And if they realize that, okay, the government is becoming more transparent in their budget, they give more money. If government is becoming more accountable, they give more money. But if they realize that all the money that they're giving to government is not being accounted for, and there's limited transparency, then they will give less money. That affects us. Because if you look at our deficit, about $5.9 billion, and if you do not have, our revenue is about 20 to 25 billion dollars, and I believe our expenditure goes all the way to 30 billion, 30 to 33 billion, roughly. So if we have limited revenue and our expenditure is high, we're always going to have deficit. And limited revenue is not also going to be healthy for our economy. So we always need to get our development partners to solve. But like I said, they also put in their money where they see impact is being registered. And the legislature also can actually use the Open Budget Survey report for accountability. I will just go straight away. Audit institutions as well, they can use this to get to understand where there are gaps and make sure that they are improved. The business community as well for lobbying, civil society raising awareness and advocacy, lobbying for policies affecting budget, and then make sure the existing ones are implemented. The ones that are not existing, we actually work towards making so. Unfortunately, I believe the budget is not supporting Navet much enough. Okay. So we just hold on to wait a bit. Okay, so while we wait for the PowerPoint to be projected, I will just move forward. Like I was saying, we are discussing who can use the results of the Open Budget Survey, and I stopped at the civil society and how they could use this information or results to do advocacy and the like. So also the ordinary citizens as well can use the Open Budget Survey for engaging their parliamentarians or their local councillors to ensure that the budget actually reflects their needs. So that will be the end of my, presentation on why budget matters. And because we want to close at 12, I will just go straight towards the presentation of the Gambia's performance on the rapid COVID-19 assessment. And in doing so, after that presentation, I will open the floor for questions. But if there's anything that you wanted to ask that is not clear to you on this presentation, maybe I can just allow, give time space of 5 minutes and answer those questions, or if you have a comment quickly. No questions or comments? Okay. Okay. Mr. Yang.
Thank you, Ma. I really enjoyed your presentation. The importance of the budget cannot be overemphasized. I think the nation's development is key, and the budget forms the cornerstone of the accountability process. And of course, as for the financial management system of the government, NAO has a key role to play, and understanding the budget is key. Why it is key? Because even in all aspects of whether the private or the public sector, particularly central government, I mean, the budget is expenditure driven in the central government, unlike the private sector. The private sector starts from the revenue. They target revenue, this is what they want to generate, then spend within that revenue generated or expected. But for government, this is what I want to do. They start from there. Just like you said it. I mean, in another way, like don't tell us your values. Show us, the budget, because the budget, tells us what government wants to do. I mean, in terms of alleviating poverty, spending on different sectors. So based on that, then now they start looking for the money. I think that's very key. That's very important. That's why some people sometimes they, query government or public sector for saying that they're coming up with projects. Unfortunately, that's how it works. Central government, this is what I want to do, then you look for the money. But of course, you have to exercise, financial discipline. Of course, but unfortunately, that's how it works. You start from the expenditure aspect. This is what I want to do, then you look for the money. This is because you know why? Because of private sector, they cannot impose taxes. Government can. And they can borrow, but of course the key message is government has to restrain and exercise financial discipline. This is why sometimes government will come up with big projects when it comes to, especially this time around, election. Let me not do, but of course, trying to, but they will be forced to look for money, start raising taxes or borrowing, but the key is they have to exercise financial discipline. And you said it all. I think you touched on all aspects of the budget. The budget is very key, very, very important. As I said, it's the cornerstone of the accountability process in the central government, because everything revolves around the budget. So it's important that we have a better understanding of it. And I also learned from it. I think the approach you have taken to present the importance of the budget, why the budget is important, I think is very educative. And thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jai. That is really helpful. And it's an add-on to what I have said. And as an expert in the field, I think that is really helpful. Any question regarding my presentation or a comment? I just take one. Okay, Mark.
I came in when already presentation is halfway. But I think I have special interest when it comes to the oversight functions. That is, especially when you talked about the national audit. The question might specifically go to audit, and also your Gambia participate in making sure that we are able to hold governments accountable as much as possible. And I believe the establishment of the national audit is to make sure that there is financial discipline when it comes to government's expenditures and so on. So I believe the process should be more holistic in a way that all components of the expenditures are actually captured. But we have seen, because of certain reasons and also based on certain laws that are put in place, that the allocation that goes to the president most of the time is not considered to audit. And the other thing is, what happens to those audit reports? Already normally they advise, but can't it go beyond advice? Because when you do not have a system in place to penalize individuals, what happens to findings? It will be as any other thing, to say, okay, they are going to audit me, they are going to advise me, and I'll work and I'll do it again. Because there is no penalties put in place to make sure that corporates are held accountable. I believe this goes to both parties to see how best we are able to work amicably to ensure that things are put in place.
Thank you. The question is very important. Part of it I will just allow Mr. Jain to answer, but also to just say that the National Audit Office is also an act of parliament, and their mandate is actually clearly defined in the act regarding their powers and their mandate. The law gives them power to do audit, and when they are done doing their audit, their reports are meant to be taken to the National Assembly, and if there's an element of fraud, they give it to the Inspector General of Police. I know the NAO have done a couple of audit reports taken to Inspector General of Police, the police, and then that of the National Assembly, but they didn't take it further. Had it been the law gives them the power to do more than just advising, then it would have been different. And like you said, we have a lacuna in our laws in terms of sanctions attached to these issues. The
there was a time that I was doing a research and asked why police do not actually investigate issues of fraud. And I was told, even though they have the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit, and then the fraud squad, and I was told the police works on directives. They have to give them directive for them to mount an investigation. Unlike other countries like that, the FBI, right? They can just, if they have an evidence to pursue or a lead to pursue, they can just go ahead and get their secret agents or their agents to go ahead and start investigating. In our case, they have to give the police a directive. So that also limits the work of NAO in terms of government, implementing their recommendations regarding financial discipline and the like. So I will just allow Parmajan in 2-3 minutes to just answer that, and later, MS, maybe we can save that for the next presentation, please.
Thank you very much. Once again, I think you have said it all. I mean, of course, we have the mandate to audit all institutions, all MDAs, including the Office of the President, and we do audit the Office of the President. There are reports available. Of course, we see the stakeholders, the Office of the President, the Accountant and Minister of Finance, and of course, it's form part of the audit of the government of the Gambia, the accounts of the Gambia. State House, of course, is no exception. Yes, audit also, we are mandated to audit and report as per the Constitution. I think we are basically reporting institution. The authority is to report. There are other institutions, man has said it. Of course, the Inspector General of Police is also in the Constitution. There is a provision that where we feel that because we are not competent to determine that certain act is an act of fraud, but we can say it's fraudulent. I mean, it's suspected fraud, but it's for another authority to take it up to prove that yes, there is fraud. Then another authority to take action on that. We do report, and also I have here a cycle. This is the accountability cycle, because it starts with the budget starts from the planning, the strategy, strategic planning, then budget preparation, including formulation, taking into account policies of government, then execution. This also, you have internal audit also to help in terms of the execution as well, to make sure that there are controls available and they are working as expected. Then there is also another area of accounting and reporting by the Accountant General or other reporting agencies that resources are allocated to report. So when after reporting, that's where we come in, National Audit Office and also the National Assembly as well. We do it together. We also also count on the National Assembly as well to help us also enforce, if we will, to ensure that there is implementation of our recommendations. I mean, that's what we have as of course, there is also a provision for surcharge, but that one is not yet, because the modalities on how to implement it, we have written to engage the National Assembly and also the Ministry of Justice to help us in that area, so that we can come up with modalities on how to do the surcharge, because we don't want to be found wanting in terms of inconsistency. Because as I said, we are not competent in that area to determine a matter to be fraud, fraudulent. Of course, we can just say suspected fraud. Of course, some are obvious in terms of records, but again, as I said, there is another authority that is responsible for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we say that because we started very late, and I just want us to make sure if we cannot finish at 12, we just extend it 30 minutes later. So what I'm about to present is actually going to facilitate more discussions, and it will catapult more ideas from you to discuss about these issues. So this is just a very short presentation on the Gambia's performance on the COVID-19 rapid assessment. And if you have any questions either for me or Mr. Jang or GPPA, you can kindly note them if that's okay, please. Umsa, can you help me with the lights again? Oh, okay. If they no, don't worry. It's clear, right? Okay, that's fine. Okay. So like I said, this is the COVID-19 rapid assessment, and it is a global report where we have extracted the Gambia's performance on how transparent it has been with COVID-19 funds and the opportunity for public participation and that of oversight. The report actually covers that extensively. And I'll just give a quick background about the COVID-19, you know, since it came into Gambia in March 2020, and that's when we actually first registered our case. And then the Gambia government actually swiftly created what we call the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund of 500 million. Later it has been 512 because it has been reported that 12 million was already used, but the president actually made or give an executive decree for the creation of this 500 million. And where does this money come from?
Through vibe.
Yes. What's the source of the money?
Travel expenses.
Yeah. You're getting more into the details. You are an expert in this field. I'm actually referring to the source. Is it coming from heaven?
No, the budget is.
It's the budget. Yes. Right? So that money actually came from the budget. And that budget, like I said, it is you and I that form that budget. And any money that is raised for that particular budget is raised in our name. So, and then after the 500 million emergency response fund was created, there came another executive decree for the creation of 700 million for food aid relief package in order to supply rice and sugar, gallon of oil and the like to 84,000 deserving households. So that was also part of the budget. And there was also a supplementary bill of 2.4 billion. In fact, I believe it was 3 billion surplus. I think Flexi made a report on that. I believe it was about 3.3 billion dollars. I mean, these figures might sound billion might sound, how to call it, you know, a word that you hear every time. 2.4 billion dollars. I can remember when we go to communities, just like how we are here, when we talk about billions, they are silent. They don't take it seriously. But when we start breaking it down to them and making them understand, number one, what a million is and what a billion is and what a billion can bring in their communities. Let's say, for example, if they are in a community without electricity, school, education, roads, and we tell them how this money can actually solve their problem that they have been going through for God knows how many centuries. Now they get to see themselves in the budget. So we should just go beyond these three figures and ask questions on those. But this is just a background and I will get into details later. So, and after all this, after the IBP and its researchers around the world realized that the governments around the world have been making swift response towards COVID-19. And they've been creating this COVID-19 funds through their budget, but at the same time as we're taking more loans and also asking for grants to respond to COVID-19. We realize that in as much as we are in a pandemic, like the IMF boss said, spend but keep your receipts. So we realize it's important to make sure there is transparency even during crisis. So the rapid assessment was introduced in 120 countries, in which Gambia is part of, and the assessment was done from December 2020 to January 2021. So, and I'll explain why it is a rapid assessment. So when these things actually started coming up, we worked with the IBP, and the indicators that we are created, there are new indicators, and I will come into that into detail. And the purpose was to get to understand how government is expending these funds, and if they are being transparent, so that we can come up with a report, advocate, engage government, and make sure they become more transparent. So the methodology. Sorry. So the methodology here actually refers to the approach. When we conduct research, we always ask about which approach do you use to conduct your research, and ask about whether it is opinion-based or fact-based. if you give an opinion-based report, then it is always questionable because that's based on what people perceive about something. But this is actually different. So, and like I said, the assessment actually includes a set of 26 new indicators. And these indicators were developed by IMF, Intosai, GIF, and OECD. So, and it is these indicators that we have used to assess these three areas, both on how transparency on COVID-19 funds, oversight, and the opportunity for public participation. So, we the researcher assess government's largest fiscal emergency policy package. We call it the EFP. So, when we looking at the government's emergency fiscal policy package, we look at the biggest one. In our case in the Gambia, we have executive degree, but there's also a document that we can refer as the EFPP, and I will come to that. And we look at the period from March to September, because research also have to have a timeline, which we call the period of review. So the period that we are reviewing is only from March 1st, 2021 to September, no, this will be March 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2020. So this is an error here. It should not be 2021. So responses to all the 26 indicators are backed by evidences reviewed by IVP. So normally, when we conduct open budget survey, it goes through different stages. We conduct the research, it goes to a government reviewer. So in our case, Gambia last year, the Minister of Finance was the one reviewing. So where they agree, the Minister of Finance say, I agree with this response, I don't agree with this. Where the Minister of Finance disagree with us, or should I say the researcher, where the Minister of Finance disagree with the researcher, they will give a reason why. So you don't just say, I disagree. Tell me why you disagree and give me evidences. So it goes to another stage, we will call a referee. So the referee look at the two responses, both from the government and that of the researcher, and the referee look at the evidences and then make a judgment. And it goes to IBB for further review. So it goes to a very robust stage in ensuring that the report is fact-based and beyond all doubt. So in this case, for COVID-19 rapid assessment, there was no government reviewer. As I said, it's a rapid assessment, and because of its nature, there was no government reviewer or a referee, so they are actually reviewed by IBP staff. So the areas that we assessed during this rapid assessment were these three pillars: how transparent the COVID-19 funds are, and then transparency actually goes beyond the word transparency. So we look at the formulation of the process, how the money is expended, how it's reported, and if the information is readily available. And we look at oversight, the role of oversight institutions in making sure they, hold government accountable, or the oversight role in the creation of the emergency fiscal policy, and the opportunity for public participation. Here, please bear with me that we're only referring to COVID-19 funds. And I give a background regarding the COVID-19 funds that we have created. The 700 million, that was executive degree, the 500 million executive degree, and that of the $2.4 billion is that we are created in the supplementary appropriation bill. So for our case, the EFPP that we assessed, and which is the largest, is the 2.4 billion. Because the government, when creating the 700 million, it was just an executive decree. There was no policy, fiscal policy, specifically on that 700 million to say, okay, this 700 million will be used to do A, B, and C, but then there's also going to be a special COVID-19 procurement guideline for the 700 million. But in our case, we are using the general COVID-19 guidelines. If I'm right, GPP, I think there was a COVID-19 committee, procurement committee, but the COVID-19 procurement committee does not have its own guidelines regarding how COVID-19 funds are going to be expended, but rather they were more referring to the GPPA Act, which governs procurement. So when we are assessing, we also assess these areas. And for our case, the 2.4 billion was the only document that outlines, 2.4 billion was the only document that outlines where the funds are coming from, because the supplementary bill has that. If it is coming from donor funds or grants, it outlines it. Also, if it is coming from any other source, it outlines it, and then also where the money is expected to go. But for the other areas, there was no information. So as a result, we did not assess that. And this supplementary act was enacted in July 2020. So what are the key findings of the research? One, we realized there are little or no opportunity for citizens to participate in the formulation and implementation of the stimulus package. So when the government was actually preparing the supplementary bill and the funds that are actually, allocated to go into COVID-19 activities, the citizens do not actually have the opportunity to discuss where they want the money to go. So there were limited public participation. And in my earlier presentation, I did emphasize the significance of the citizens participating throughout the budget cycle. Even during crisis, it is important to know what the citizens want, because there are certain businesses that were no more functioning. There were some public officers that were sent with 50% salary. There are some citizens that lost their job, right? So before the government come with this 2.4 billion, decide, okay, we're going to give back price or give stimulus package to students. I'll have to discuss and then get to understand what are your priorities. Maybe you have back of rice. Maybe you how to call it farm for the past season and you have sufficient back of rice. You don't need more. You need something better or something that you do not have. So that's the reason why it is important to have this conversation before the formulation of such packages. Number two, we also realized that the government did not adopt key measures to enhance transparency and accountability in the implementation of the COVID-19 policy and fiscal response, as well as transparency on procurement of goods and services. So like I said, the procurement policy that we are used were the existing one. But there were no new policies, procurement policies that were prepared focusing on COVID-19 activities. Because this is an unforeseen circumstance, right? And in this area, when government is actually doing procurement, it's expedited. Because there is an urgent need for the material, right? But the GPPA does not, I believe, the Act does not cover that. So the need for there to be a new policy that will govern, okay, because the procurement process, some of it were bypassed, not in a negative way, but they were expedited to ensure we have the ambulances, we have the ventilators and the likes, because the country was in desperate need. But regardless, there should have been a policy that will actually come up with a guideline and say, okay, because we are in this crisis, this is the method that should be used. So we realized that policy was not actually enacted, or it was not prepared. So, and the other good thing that we have identified is that the legislature was involved in the discussion and approval of the emerging fiscal policy. So what we have identified as best practice is, when government is coming with an emerging fiscal policy, it has to have a level of oversight. So I said earlier, the supplementary bill was about 3.3 billion. That's what the government asked for. But when they took it to Parliament, Parliament looked at those allocations and realized that they should cut it more. So they brought it down to 2.4 billion. So there was a level of oversight in creating that emergency fiscal policy package. And here comes the results of the Gambia's performance on COVID-19 activities alone. So this is not general. It's not referring to budget transparency. The report for budget transparency will come in 2022. If you wanted to have the access for 2019, it's publicly available on our website, I believe, and then that of IBP. But this is only focusing on COVID-19 activities from March to September 2020. So this is the scoring criteria. We have 5 categories, and the minimum score is 0 to 0.2, which is there is minimal either transparency or minimal public participation or oversight. Then follows limited, which is higher than minimal, because it starts from 0.21 to 0.40, and follows some, meaning there are some information, some level of transparency, some level of public participation, or some level of accountability or oversight. Then adequate, that is if there is adequate information to justify that there is adequate transparency, public participation, or oversight. The same thing for substantial, which is the highest score. So why not we go together and look at how we perform in the rapid COVID-19 assessment. So it is, when it comes to transparency, we have minimal score, which is 0 to 0.2. And this actually looks at the macroeconomic and aggregated budget information. And I will tell you, I will explain this more. When, before we start the introduction of the package, right? So when the package was being introduced, before it was taken to Parliament, it was not made available. So that limits transparency, right? Because it was after it was tabled after, at Parliament that the public have access to it. In fact, it was not also publicly accessible. The document was not publicly published by the Minister of Finance. It was through the journalists that went to Parliament were able to have access through an Excel document. But it does not have government's logo or what have you. So there were minimal transparency in the introduction of that package. The second thing is the macroeconomic and aggregated budget information. So remember, there is what we call medium-term fiscal framework, MTEF, medium-term economic fiscal framework, that the government has. So it's like a 5-year government plan, and it gives a projection of revenue and expenditure for the 5 years, and it is updated every fiscal year. Guys, the way I think the AC is very cold, and some of us are feeling tired. Can we just maybe stand for a minute? I'm not very good at, how to call it, MS is good at that, so MS...
This is MS's job.
Oh, Maravi is very good at this. Maravi, can you help us?
Let's get a fruit salad, please. Huh? Come on, man.
Hey, that's exercise.
Just don't make us dance.
No, you're not gonna dance. I don't dance. So it goes like this: Jericho, Jerusalem, Jericho.
Are we praying?
Jerusalem, Jericho, Jerusalem.
I'm not hearing the noise.
Follow me. Yeah, that will do.
Do you want us to turn off the AC or leave it like that?
It's okay.
Huh?
Turn it off. Just read it.
Take it to 25. 25. Can you increase for us? Okay. Back to the presentation. So, like I said, there's what we call MTEF, Medium-Term Economic Fiscal Framework. So it is a government policy document that actually, expenditure, medium-term fiscal framework. Exactly. Thank you very much for that extra information. So that particular document actually is a government policy document. It gives government projection, both on revenue, expenditure, and then that of sources of financing for the next 5 years. And it is updated annually to reflect the realities. So when the COVID-19 actually hits the country, it affects the budget and it affects our macroeconomic projections because there were reallocations, and then because of the impact of COVID-19, there were also revenue loss. So we expected that there were going to be an updated, how do you call it, macroeconomic projections based on COVID-19, based on the effects of COVID-19. But that was not done, right? because expenditures were prioritized to COVID-19 activities. There were revenue loss, and then also government swiftly went towards another action of getting more money. So that wasn't there. We have also limited information on that. Policy measures as well, they are information but limited. Recipients and performance as well, the same thing. Sources of financing was very minimal. And that of extra budgetary funds, also we do not have that sufficient information. So it's also, transparency is limited into that area. And then also the implementation of the package. So there is no policy that guides how this package is going to be implemented. What was done was there was a committee that oversees the implementation of this package, or that oversees the implementation of COVID-19 activity. But there is no information that will guide, okay, this is how the COVID-19 activities are going to be implemented. Reporting on execution. Also, we have minimal information on that. If you go on the Ministry of Finance website, as of last year, you will see what we call monthly expenditure brief. Let's say, for example, for September expenditure brief, you will see a reporting category where it says COVID-19 activities. Total 1.something billion. I believe it was $1.1 billion. That was expended as of March to September. But then beyond that particular information, we look at the core information. Where were the money spent into? We just get the lump sum. But how much went into the procurement of drugs, ambulances, quarantine, and frontline health workers allowances, and the like. So there were minimal information on that. Extra budgetary funds, procurement as well, it was minimal because this information were available. Although the GPA recently, the GPA website has started putting information regarding sources, where the monies were spent, and the categories. If it is SS, which means single sourcing, they give it a category. If it is RFQ, which means request for quotation, they put it, if it is through open tender, which I believe they give it OT as the abbreviation, they also put it out there. So as a result of that, the information is there, but the contract that is actually awarded to them is not actually available. So the role of the oversight institutions. So the National Assembly plays limited role because they played oversight role in the formation of the fiscal policy. And for the National Audit Office, what we later realized was that the National Audit Office was doing rapid auditing, if I'm right, on COVID-19 funds. Yeah. Yeah. Huh? Yes. Yeah, maybe later. Thank you. So the National Audit Office actually is, what we have realized during the course of the research is that the National Audit Office is doing a rapid COVID-19 auditing, specifically on COVID-19 funds. But like I said, this report is yet to be published, right? It's yet to be published. So this assessment was done from March to September. So during those periods, the information was not available yet. So, but then when we do another rapid assessment and the information is available, then we use that particular information. Like I said, right now, I can actually do the research and tell IBP, oh, the National Audit Office is doing an audit. We put it in the response, right? But then, if it goes to review and then asks you, where is the report? You tell them it has been prepared, but it's not yet prepared yet. But audit takes time, we just understand. Like I said, this is just a rapid assessment, but it doesn't mean that NAO is not taking any role on that. Public participation, it was minimal. The public do not actually have any opportunity in taking part of the formulation or the execution or the reporting of COVID-19 emergency fiscal policy package. So later, Pamajan, I will give you the floor. Just wanted to wrap up this presentation. So we look at the recommendations. So the recommendation one is for us to act now, or the government to act now, all of us, to strengthen accountability in ongoing response to COVID-19 crisis. Like I said, we do this assessment, identify where the gaps are, and come up with a recommendation. And here are some of the recommendations. So we said the government should put in place adequate mechanism for citizen participation in the formulation, approval, and execution of the additional emergency fiscal policy packages. And then to put in place specific guidance on the use of emergency procurement procedures and make them available publicly. Empowering the National Audit Office to adapt its auditing approaches and practices to conduct expedited audits on emergency spending programs, and publish COVID-19 expenditures covering all funds. So if you go on the Ministry of Finance website, like the amount I told you, 1.1 billion of COVID-19 activities, is only focusing on government local fund. It doesn't cover all funds. And remember, when COVID-19 hit the Gambia, not only government partners, there were also funds that were domestically generated. Let's say, for example, AFISA committed 12 million. The Gambia Bankers Association committed 3 million. The, what's the name again? The one that do trade fair. GCCI did a telethon. And they generated a lot of millions to fight COVID-19 activities. There's also a donation that came from the current captain of the Gambia football team, Umar Koli, $500,000. And you name it. But where does the, how were those money spent? We didn't get to understand who received the money. We got to understand who received the money on behalf of the government, but where it was spent, we never know. All that we reported was on government funds. And in fact, it only says, this is the total amount we spent. But where it was spent, we don't know. The money that we received from public, where they were spent, we don't know. So you will see some of these institutions actually understand that this is what they foresee, and as a result, some of them were implementing the money that they raised in collaboration with government, but they didn't give the money to the government. So there were a lack of trust. So I believe this is one of the recommendations that the government should do to ensuring that they publish COVID expenditures covering all funds. Report on how specific COVID-19 donations, I just talk about this, from individual institutions have been used to finance COVID-19 activities. Recommendation 2 is to implement existing legislation to improve transparency, citizen engagement, while strengthening follow-up audit findings by the Auditor General. So when the Auditor General come up with his recommendations, we wanted to make sure that the audit findings by NAO, like I said, relating to COVID spending are acted upon swiftly, and that substantive audit follow-up is strengthened beyond the emergency. So this goes back to your question, Umar. So what we are now calling is when the National Audit Office complete their audit on COVID-19 activities, and they come up with their recommendations and their findings, the government should swiftly act upon them. Because that's their role, especially the IG and the head of the National Assembly. And the accountability should go beyond only summoning or subpoenaing documents or officials, asking questions, and that is done. There could be some element of fraud and mismanagement that could be identified by NAO. We've seen in the past they've identified such in their reports, nothing has been done in the implementation by the government, but not the NAO as an audit institution. So this is one of our key recommendations to the government. I wish FPAC was here, or the Minister of Finance, to make sure they take this up. So that is okay. That is my presentation. I finished on time 12, so maybe we just take 30 minutes to discuss and move on. So, Mr. Jang, I think you have something to say. Yes. Yes. Okay, I think there's another mic beside.
Okay, are you hearing me? Yes. Okay, thank you. Once again, as my rightly said, as an initial measure, was it in March, April, latest May, what the Auditor General did was to issue guidelines to government to assist, so that they can follow in order to avoid mistakes in terms of, spending or responding to the pandemic. That was done. Well, whether they adhere to it or not, that's another thing. Also, then we started the audit. I mean, the audit is in 4 subject matters. We split it into 4 subject matters. That is procurement of medical items, distribution of medical items, then procurement of food items, and distribution of food items. So 3, and we break them down into subject matters. But of course, as a result of the 4 subject matters, we produce 3 reports. We have already done, the reports are ready and shared with, but what we are doing now is to consolidate. That is what is taking time, to consolidate the 3 reports into one and share it with the National Assembly. But as far as the auditors, the first phase, the reports are ready, already shared with management responses received and incorporated and shared with the key stakeholders. Of course, the auditors or the coordinating institution. Why we have 3 reports and of course 4 subject matters? Because procurement and distribution of medical items is coordinated by one institution, which is Ministry of Health. That's why it's one report. Then when it comes to procurement of food items, it's Ministry of Trade. That is the coordinating institution. When it comes to distribution, is National Disaster Management Agency. So this is why we have 3 reports. And these 3 reports we want to consolidate it into one report and share it with the National Assembly by exception of the general public. This is what we are doing. Most of the, first phase covered from March to October. And as far as the environment is concerned, all monies available is about over 900 million. And also what is spent is over 800 million, including transportation of the food items. Of course, NDMA as the coordinating institution for distribution, of course, we also realize that they also, we are involved in the procurement, which we have some reservations because of they have their act also which deals with emergency because of crisis. But that is maybe they misinterpreted somewhere and so on. Because of once funds reach their accounts, it's ring fence. So they can spend in the name of emergency without following strict DPPA rules. But this was not their own funds intended. So that's another that's one of the few findings that we have. Also about, I think you mentioned about needs assessment as well. We also identified that there was just government identifying what commodities, to this thing, not finding out from the general public, and also delays in the name of, the timing of procurement and distribution. Also, there are also other issues that we order. And also, what delay also contributed to the delay is, because for us, we have to give opportunity to the auditor to respond so that we can incorporate. But responses we are not forthcoming. And also sometimes, it's not that sometimes, and that it's not that they don't want to be transparent, but because of maybe they don't have the capacity or they don't understand. Because one of the coordinating institutions, what happened is when we issued our draft management letter for them to respond to, it was one person who was trying to answer, come up with the responses alone. Whereas, it's a committee. And tasks were assigned. So instead of involving, the members, that person was trying to, and when he responded, we considered as inappropriate because it's not, answer. So, and it was back and forth, but until when we had meeting, and we clarified, even one of the World Bank experts even joined that meeting because, they were trying to, explain to him that audit is not, but when we explained to him at that meeting, at least he was able to be convinced. Because of, it's not one person, it's not about the person, it's about the institution or the coordinating institution that we are auditing and processes. So these are some of the, maybe sometimes it's lack of, sometimes also it's lack of maybe having the capacity to keep proper records also. And also, as we said, is this an emergency? I mean, we should need to come up with not the committees or the committee, but it should be part of our procurement process, or a separate document or act to deal with emergency. Because it's not only about COVID, because we had the Ebola. We may have something else, God forbid. So we should have at least a procurement rules in terms of crisis, how to deal with procurement in terms of crisis, or improve on because I think what is mentioned in the DPWA is not adequate to mitigate some of these lapses when it comes to emergency. Of course, we recognize the fact that it's emergency, but you cannot do it anyhow. Yeah. And what we also realized is like you are allowed, unregistered suppliers are allowed, but that's a recipe for misappropriation. It's like you can have special purpose. I can also just register for the purpose of, and maybe some of those are the risks that we identify as well. Some can just register for the purpose, because what happened is, like, if you are not registered even with DPWA, I mean, you cannot receive your payment because the email system will not recognize you. What happened is, like, they regularize their registration after being part of the suppliers, because you cannot get your money if you don't register. So you see, and DPWA sometimes they will say, I mean, they don't allow retrospective approval. But in this case, I don't know. Maybe that's another. so there are a lot of issues that are interesting, of course. But because of responses we are not forthcoming, and we want to hear from them so that people can, without issuing report, it has no response to the affected management. So this is what deal. But for us, we have done. Of course, that's the first phase. The second phase also. We have also gone to all the regions in terms of allowances and also quarantine, as you mentioned. Also, we have captured all this, what is spent, what is bad, and so I think we'll come up with a lot of information. Even we're trying to maybe summarize, because it's voluminous. So we don't want people to lose interest in terms of volumes, and because we want to send the message across. This is why it's taking time. But we have already done the first phase, and the reports are available. 3 reports already.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jan. And I think you've raised some very key points as to the challenges of the government that actually, get us this result. And for us, the civil society, these are the kind of information that we collect, and we do what is called advocacy. And advocacy comes in different ways. We now understand how government performed, and from the government perspective and audit, we now got information regarding the delay. So, and this is really important, because if there are prolonged delay in publishing audit reports because of the auditees are not coming forth with reports or responding to the auditor's finding, then the audit cannot be completed until they exhaust all. And if there is a delay and there's supposed to be another audit that is supposed to be done, you first have to complete this one and then go to another one. So I think for us, the civil society, if we identify these challenges, this is what we have to do. You don't really have to do it because we are here and then you get the information. We have to do it because we want to see change. So thank you very much, Mr. Jan, for that. And I believe this is something that we can start looking at. This is the gaps that we've seen the government is coming up with. How do we make sure that these gaps are strengthened? Sometimes we, how to call it, I mean, if you look at what we call public policy drafting, there's always consultation that is done with citizens, because it is the policy is actually going to affect the citizen. If there is none, we advocate for there to be, just like the media has done with the access to information law, which is now at advanced stage at the parliament. So thank you very much for that. Any question? I've seen some hands being raised, and I asked you to record it. Who was the one with the question?
MS, I'll give someone else the opportunity then to you.
No, not the question. I have a contribution.
Yeah, but why not we? Oh, I saw two hands from this end. Yeah, it was you. Okay, then you can ask the comment, and I will then move to MS and Flex. Do you want?
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Awasiwa, representing University of the Gambia, Students Union. I just want to make a brief remark on the importance of auditing, but how it has yielded no dividend for us in terms of promoting accountable governance and also ending or fighting corruption. If we look at our laws, we know obviously that it has not provided us the fruit that we deserve. For the fact that findings of the National Audit Office are presented to the National Assembly under its other powers and functions as per Section 102 of the Constitution. And in executing this duty, the National Assembly can vet and examine public accounts and expenditures of the government to ascertain whether or not there are irregularities in terms of expenditure and whether or not public finances have been expended as required. What happened in turn is this report or findings at the National Assembly based on the report submitted by the Auditor General are being placed in the hands of a political appointee in the name of the IGP, which in turn make the reports barely fruitful for us as a country. I believe that this is an institution that has close or close collaboration and work with the Office of the President, and therefore it would succumb to any pressure from the executive not to take any action against the body. That is why I think the law has failed in giving us the fruit we deserve. My alternative thinking is the National Anti-Corruption Commission would have been the right body that would execute punitive actions through court recourses against the executive in the fulfillment of our audit reports. But because this body is not available, audit reports are barely significant in terms of accountable governance in the country. When these reports are given to the IGP for further actions, we have never seen any action taken. All we saw is inactions. And that brings a big question. Why do we have to invest so much money in the National Audit Office to perform its duty only for its reports to be dusted in the hands of a political appointee? And I think it is right time for civil society actors and other institutions, be it private or non, to take this bold step of enforcing the establishment and institution of the National Anti-Corruption Commission so that we would have a fruit of national audit reports. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar. I think that's really valid, and we still have, that's also another conversation regarding the formulation of the Anti-Corruption Commission. The bill is requirement, and for the past 2 years, it has been there, but we haven't seen any advancement being done on that today. So I think that's another conversation that we can have. And we need to find a way to ensure the auditor's report or the AG's report is implemented. And if the current legislation that gives, the legislative framework that gives this institution to actually implement these recommendations, yet because these institutions perhaps are also answerable to someone else, and because of that political hierarchy, they are unable to implement this, then we need to look at, remedy in terms of which organization should be actually, or government institutions should be responsible. Whether we should have an Act of Parliament, there is an Act of Parliament that established the Financial Intelligence Unit. I believe that's the Anti-Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Act. It established the FIU, gives its mandate, but the independence is actually not codified in that law. So maybe we need to look at how do we strengthen the independence, or how do we establish independence for FIU, so that this report goes to, because it's public finance matter, the report goes to FIU instead of the IGP. But as it is in our law, like you said, that's how it is codified. It goes to the IGP, a political appointee, or the National Assembly. One of the issues is that there's also the issue of capacity. There's only 1 or 2, 3 parliamentarians that you can point out to and then say, yes, they are subject matter specialists in public finance. But if you have 3 out of 50, I'm just giving a hypothetical figure. If you have this out of many, then the remaining would just be there asking questions that might not even be related to this. You understand? So I think that's what we need to do, and find a way that the auditor does his work, they present their report. Sometimes he sits there for God knows how long at Parliament, right? So we need to also make sure we push the interest of the Parliament having an urgency on the auditor's report, and making sure it is, they push the, unfortunately I don't think that is possible, to push the IGP to execute the recommendation of the AG. So I totally agree with you that we need to revisit such. Thank you very much. MS, can you?
It's just similar to what you were saying about the execution of the audit reports, and also the challenges at the National Assembly when it comes to the public FPAC. We have backlog of reports. Probably they are trying to fast track it, but it's a problem. So I think also the National Assembly, as a very key oversight institution, who has the power of the High Court, should also be very proactive when it comes to the execution, because they can sanction, they can summon, they can take, or they can make the executive to implement these things. During Jammeh's era, we've seen people being arrested on financial mismanagement due to reports that emerged from the National Assembly. We've seen the NEDI, the former NEDI director, was arrested due to certain malpractices that happened during the era of Jammeh, and many other people. So I think it's not only the police, but I think the National Assembly is there to ensure that these laws are, if the executive is not doing anything, they are the oversight. And also the public should also look into the quality of people they elect into the National Assembly. I think that is very important. You don't just elect people, because you want them to be there, or they are just active in community services. The National Assembly is beyond that. It's something that has to deal with legislation, representation, and then having a strong oversight understanding on issues. So I think also the onus lies on us, the people, the public, who elect those people. Because if we put the wrong people that we think probably they are very good in community services or whatever, yes, it's good to have those kind of people that are very active, but indeed to also look at the quality of the person, whether the person have the capacity. Some has the capacity, but they also have this Maslow syndrome tendency, because the National Audit Office is doing their job, and then they're bringing it, making sure that it is presented to the National Assembly. Then the National Assembly have that oversight function to ensure that they call on those responsible. They can, what is stopping the National Assembly from calling the IGP and ensuring that they do their job? They have those powers to summon. Look at just recently when a petition committee of the National Assembly summoned the IGP office, and they were there to answer. So I think it's important, not only the police, but the National Assembly should make things happen. Not just masla. It has to go beyond that. Because people are stealing millions, and people are giving projects to oversee and finance. But in the end, those projects are not seen. So I think it's important to note that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. MS, for that.
Okay. I think I will sit here because I want to make sure that the GPPA are hearing me very well when I ask this question. Maybe they might answer. But before I go into that, MS, your point is exactly spot on. Our National Assembly members should be summoning the IGP to come to the National Assembly and to tell them why they are not prosecuting over millions of monies that have been embezzled. We have ministers, and the National Audit Auditors have done their job. In their most recent audit that is public, the 2016 version, millions of monies have been taken by former ministers. Yet still, our National Assembly members cannot summon the IGP to come to the National Assembly so that he can make sure he does the necessary, prosecute those individuals, make an example. The Janney Commission reports are here. Nothing. So, coming to the procurement, which I understand from GPPA, they say they believe is transparent. We saw when the advertisement for the procurement went out. And within what, 2 days or so? In 24 hours, you send out an advertisement for how many thousands of bags of rice, oil, all these materials. Within 24 hours, those bags of rice and everything, they are in Banjul. And we say that that is a transparent procurement process. Let's be serious. We need to be very, very serious in this country. Procurement is far from transparent. But not only that, how much money was spent in mobilizing all those goods so that they could have a nice photo op, so that the executive could have a nice photo op. How much money of your taxpayers' money was spent on that photo op instead of taking the goods to where they should be placed? Instead of when the goods are bought or from whoever, in their specific locations, they are there and they disperse them closest to reduce cost. We had the NAO. The cost is not just buying the service. Distribution. And I really hope that they have interrogated that distribution, because that distribution which we saw costed the Gambian taxpayers a lot of money just for a photo op. How much rice could have been bought? How much oil could have been bought? So the problem is that our elected officials, on MS is very correct. We have to make sure that the National Assembly will put in there people who are going to do the needful. When on any audit report that comes out, millions of monies have been embezzled, they make an example, they summon the IGP. Any ministry in which that, should the President's office be involved in procurement? So I think I will just leave it there. I've said a lot of things. Maybe Gambia PPA, procurement guys, can tell us how that 24-hour turnaround demonstrate that there was transparency in procurement. I beg to differ. Maybe they can help us to understand.
Thank you for that question. I am prepared to answer that question. GVP as an authority, as I said, this particular room, we conducted a series of trainings in this particular hall, and the same questions have been asked. And my answer is, procurement, there are methods. The moderator, the presenter, of course, mentioned the methods. One of them is single sourcing. Maybe you don't know what single sourcing means. Single sourcing means you can even go to a particular supplier based on your requirements and give him the contract. just go there and give you the contract. Single source, but it's based on conditions. The conditions of single source is under section 44, A, B, C, and D. Okay, the reason why GPPA give approval for that particular procurement of rice. Okay, one of the conditions of single source, section 44C, that single source based on emergency. And COVID-19, we all will attest to the fact that it's emergency. Lives are at stake. People lose their jobs. Some of them, they can't even feed their family. The government feels that need is there. GPPA is engaged. Initially, they said, let's single source it to at least a major suppliers in this country to supply this rice. But GPPA as an authority, we said, no, it's against Section 3 of the Act. Section 3 is saying that equal treatment to all suppliers. The money is too much, but of course, let's float it for 2 days or 3 days, so that at least potential suppliers can come in and supply. The approval was given based on that fact. What I would also say, before some of my colleagues will just jump on and say things, have your facts right. We are all young. We all want to see this country to move. That is why we are there. I, for one, I sit in the COVID-19 committees, and I will say no to some transactions. Some of them, they will even report me to my DG to make sure that things go right. And this COVID-19 rise, we take our stand as an authority, and we did. It should be single source to a one supplier. What we said no, because if you see the major importers in this country are not even Gambians. We can all attest to that fact. But when we open it to at least RFQ, let at least some potential suppliers come in. At least some Gambians won the contract. So let's have our facts right. Thank you.
Okay, but that doesn't answer the question.
No, wait. Can I?
My question, let's be very clear.
Okay, I just wanted to buttress on what he said. Okay. My name is Pamudan, and I think people are just, let's say, throwing hands or shades to GPPA, but the committee was more than just GPPA. Even audit was part of the committee, and they were there when national
internal audit.
Okay, they are still under them audit. So let's say, okay, internal audit. To be specific, internal audit was there. Okay, okay. For the 24 hours. For the 24 hours rice procurement.
That's the question.
The reason why the 24 hours rice procurement came was, it was supposed to be single source to a particular supplier. And seeing the amount of money given out to a foreigner, and there are few Gambians that are suppliers, we deem it fit that it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't have happened.
It shouldn't have happened.
Okay.
And you guys have to know that the president has the right, a directive, straight directive, that he can use his powers to actually tell them that to single source without even coming to the GPPA. These people need to know. If GPPA can fight that, for them to have a 24 hours advert, then I think you guys need to give a handing clap for GPPA. At least, I think 44, if I can fully remember, 44 suppliers that we are dealing with rice. And I can tell you, they were giving them at a price that national trade gave it out. It's not the suppliers that pegged the price there. It was Minister of Trade, sorry. Minister of Trade. So if GPPA can try to minimize all that, to have a 24 hours advert, how many millions would have gone to a foreign?
So the confusion is now 24 hours advert, but then the goods are there within 24 hours. So how does that work? This is what we are confused about, us the people, that the advertisement came out, and before even the advertisement period should have concluded, and then after the advertisement concludes, that's when you start to finalize the things should come. Okay. But like you said, this is why we are confused.
Wait, the issue is you're confused in two things. There was a tender. I think National Audit can say that. There was a tender. At the same time, there was a single source. This is something that people don't know. So, wait, there was a tender, and at the same time, there was a single source. So the single source was the one that was in front of there.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a president directive. That was a directive from the president. So obviously we have nothing to do with that. So if that one happens, what can we do?
I appreciate it. This is you have made sense. It makes sense.
At 24 hours, if he was saying that the goods were there 24 hours, that is less than 24 hours. That was even less than 15 hours because the advertisement was done at 8 p.m. at GRT's News. And let's say by 2 p.m. the following day, goods are there. That is not even 24 hours. So sometimes, as my colleague said, we need to get our facts right. And some of, I heard that we are saying that transparency. When we were trained the journalists, I told them this. If you go to a particular institution and you don't go to the right person to get information, and there are procedures to get information in any institution, you cannot just jump in a particular information, go to PRO, and say, I want this. If the PRO knows his work right, he will never give it to you. And I'm telling you this, some of the journalists are actually doing, or they will say that they have a discussion with the director, and at the end of the day, it turns out to be someone who wants information.
That's not best practice.
Exactly.
What you're saying is not best practice. That's not best practice.
Okay, I think I appreciate the conversation, both the question from the Flex and the answers from GPA, and thank you for also bringing a new information that is not known to us. We didn't, how to call it. And it's also important to point out that the advertisement did not come from GPA, it came from Ministry of Trade. And it was on the 23rd of Ministry of,
GPA cannot publish anything.
Yes, yeah, that's where I'm coming from. The advertisement came from Ministry of Trade on the 23rd of April, and it was noon. And it was closed on the 24th of April noon. So you came up with a new information thanks to Flex's question regarding the president giving directive for single sourcing, which I believe also jeopardizes the transparency, which you have no power to stop as per the current legal framework, which I think last 2 weeks I made a presentation about that regarding the GPPA Act, and I actually pointed out this. And one example that I gave was actually that of the Banjul rehabilitation project that was awarded to one company on the pretext of pre-financing. We did not go through any procurement procedure, and there were some executive, how to call it, power that GPPA might have. Might not have powers to regulate. But the thing is now, GPPA is the regulatory authority. We need to go back and then look at the act and see where the powers of GPPA is limited, and then we empower them so that GPPA can look at the IEC saga, right? So we need to look at that, and then because our interest is GPPA to be given the power it needs, GPPA to be given the independence it needs, so that they can regulate procurement process in this country the way it should be done, either from the president or not. The president must not have the power to just give contracts or to say give it to MS. It should not be the case. But as they said, as our current legal framework give that particular opportunity. So we need to go back as advocates and then change that. So I will just go to Pamaja and then to the lady.
It's key is about the regulations. So that it should not be discretionary. You use it, at your own will to favor it. Yes, talking about foreigners benefiting. Of course, some of these foreigners have been here for ages, and they are now Gambians even. And I can tell you that even the benefits, even though Gambians were involved, it still goes back to it because they are the major importers. Let me tell you that. And one of them even withdrew because they realized that, you know, I bid it for a lower price, but still I'm the major supplier. Other bidders can still come, they will still come to me, back to me. You see, that's what happened. And they are still the beneficiaries. So, I mean, I can tell you that, you know, so there are a lot of issues. We are not doing GPPA, but we are talking about, you know, regulations. We are talking about institutions, you know, I mean, strong institutions, so that this can be addressed. I mean, just like we said about the implementation of some of these audit findings by National Assembly during Jammeh, but it was cherry picking. I mean, it wasn't institutionalized. If I thought it was institutionalized, it would have been good. But now that's why it disappeared, because it wasn't institutionalized, and it was used to, you know, as and when they, you know, want to look at what about the rice mill. I mean, our report is like this, but they only use it when they wanted to, you know, punish, you know. So you see, these are some of the, we want things to be institutionalized. Just like, that's why we want, it's not about apportioning billion, but it's one, you know, laws and regulations, strong institutions. So that if we have strong institutions, do we need anti-corruption commission? We don't. In fact, anti-corruption is just coming to sensationalize things, coming, you know, fighting people, you know, finding them, people, you know, embezzle, and they will recover part of it. And even sometimes some of them will end up even being corrupt, even because of what is involved. So we want strong institutions. I think that is key. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Jan. And you can go on that mic on the next.
And I think one thing I think there are a lot of ideas coming out. I'm noting. I think what's his name from the university?
Yes.
Omar and I think Amas and yours even. I think a lot of that I'm noting that that can also even improve our processes and come up. So I think yes, I think it should not be confrontational, but at least what can we, you know, for us, because if you know your gaps, that is when you, for us that's why you know, I'm always listening. You don't even look down on what gathered, what forum. You always go because you can always learn, at least if it is one, you know, aspect of the, so you always learn and improve. You know, to know your gaps, you know, that's when you can address and, you know, improve and become better. Yeah. Otherwise, if you try to be defensive,
Thank you very much. I am Fatou Yafa from Salimata Foundation for Education. Basically, my contribution will be on threefold. The first one is the people that we voted for in the National Assembly. I think this whole thing, like the implementation of the audit report, and also I will talk about the education sector, the impact of COVID-19 on the education sector, and also one or two things like what all of the people are facing in the society due to this COVID-19. I think coming back to the National Assembly, somebody, MS made mention of it. I think the people that we're going to vote in Parliament is very important. And I think as advocates, we should make sure that we go back to the society, we go back to the people, and this should be our focus in the next parliamentary election. Because I for one, I believe that the people that are in the National Assembly are not representing the Gambian populace. Because the implementation of this audit report should in fact be their responsibility. With all the things that they say in the national, the corruption that is happening in this country here, I believe if the National Assembly members take it as seriously, all this will come to an end. And also going to the side of the education system, I believe the most serious or the damage of COVID-19 hits the education system more than any other department or institution, because I am a teacher by profession and I know what the impact that it has on the side of the education system. And In fact, if you look at it, teachers were, assessment was done, and in fact, data was collected for teachers that have been going to school during this COVID-19. If you can, some people that are in the system can bear witness that teachers have been, from morning to evening going to school, and they are not paid with that because of COVID-19. But data was collected, and they said they are going to compensate them on that. In fact, if you go to the school system, you didn't in fact have some, the basic things that, these children and then also the school, the teachers needs to, to make sure that they protect themselves from this virus, was not available in the school system. If you look at it, one teacher been with more than 60 students in schools, more especially in the Greater Banjul areas, is risky. But I think government doesn't pay more attention on the education sector. And if you look at it, they said, the government in fact said that teachers will be compensated with this fund. Data was collected, and teachers were expecting that they will get something from it, because some of them are having 2 jobs, because we know how the education system is. It cannot sustain the salary that you're getting. And some teachers are, in fact, they quit some of their daily activities that will at least earn them something, and sacrifice to be in school to make sure that the students get the contact house that they need to get. But so unfortunately that those teachers have been in school and they could not in fact get what they are entitled to getting. And also, if you look at it in the society, if you look, the government is not that much doing good, or they're not serious with this. We have people that were this rice distribution, the people that are part of it for 24 days, if I am right, they're supposed to pay them, understand, per day $300. But there are people outside, there are people in still now that cannot in fact get that money. That the distributors, yes. Yeah, $300 per day, but some of them still cannot get what they should pay them. And if they go and ask for what they are entitled of, they will say, like, we don't have enough questions, or we don't have any questions to answer with regards to that, or you can go and read this and this and that. And I think there is no transparency, and there is a mismanagement of fund with this COVID-19, because we have seen the Minister of Health, in fact, being at the National Assembly saying that there are a lot of corruption or a lot of mismanagement of funds in this COVID-19 funds. And you will see that, in fact, you see government officials, or people that are directly in contact with this COVID-19 fund, in institutions, they are fighting each other. I should be there, or I should not be there. But all those blames, I believe, if a minister, a full minister of a state, go to a parliament saying that there is corruption in this, so meaning that blame, in fact, should be on the National Assembly members, because they should take it as a responsibility to make sure that a full minister, a state minister, says there is a corruption. There is this, that is a corruption happening in an institution. So this should be our #1 priority, to make sure that we account those people that are involved in it. So as young people, I think we need to make sure, we need to advocate for this, that next election, we should make sure that we tie our belt to make sure our fathers and then our mothers that are there to vote for people that will represent the country, not an individual at the National Assembly.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to give, I think we should end up, so that is for 6. Then we do not actually have that friendly staff really that I want to be here today. So I'll just take 2 questions and a deep opportunity for those who did not have the opportunity to speak. You've made a very key point, and I think that's cause for another discussion in terms of Parliament picking up information that is being given by a state minister regarding issues of corruption. So this all is possible. We have what we call ombudsman. Even if we don't have the anti-corruption commission, we have the ombudsman's office, and by law they're supposed to
investigate allegations of corruption, but God knows what's going on. So I will come to you, GPPA. I will come to you to make a clarification or any comments you have. I'll give her and there to allow another person. Please, make your correction short and precise.
Comments and questions.
Yes.
Very short.
Yes.
So we can start.
Please make it very short.
So I just wanted like a clarification because as far as I'm concerned, the Ministry of Higher Education gives scholarships to students in tertiary schools, for example UTG. So I just wanted to understand, because obviously if they're giving us scholarships, there should be like a budget or an amount of money allocated for that. And then apparently they are owing the UTG a huge amount of money. And I just want to understand if like, obviously which should happen if they're like, if there's a budget allocated for them to provide these scholarships, because every semester they award scholarships to students. And if they don't have money, they will not give these scholarships. So I just want to understand.
If you go to the Ministry of Higher Education budget, you will see a budget line item that talks about scholarship for students. It gives a lump sum, but it doesn't tell you, it doesn't give a narrative to explain how many students are supposed to benefit from the scholarship and how much. So that is one of the gaps that we have in our national budget. The national budget is not, it's detailed in terms of allocations and figures, but it doesn't give narrative to explain. So you need to look at that, how to call it, budget, and then do deeper research, right? And get to understand, maybe go in there and ask, okay, I've seen 500 million, or let's say 20 million for university students. How many students are you expecting to give this to? So if they give you a number, let's say they'll tell you, okay, we're planning to support 300. You do the calculation with that amount of money, you get to understand how much they will have. But the budget doesn't tell you exactly how much you will have or how much he will have. But
there's
then,
allocation.
yeah, there's allocation. There's allocation in it. Yes.
Like
So
200 million for
yeah,
scholarship.
yeah. If you go into the budget, I will always also encourage you to please just download the budget. It's online. Look at this. Allocations, and then engage your government officials on that. I hope that answers your question, right? Okay. The other one. Yes.
wax nga bu bari bu xal chance keneen
You've talked enough, huh?
that's one enough.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Abdullah Krubali. I am representing the Hopes of Tomorrow. For me, I just have few, but you are limiting our contributions, with regards to considering the time and whatever. But I just have two comments. First, I think we have two problems in this country. One is negligence. The second one is laissez-fairness. I think as Gambians, we don't care much with regards to even the national budget. In this budget, how many people do even discuss about these things? It's not much. If you go out there, you ask people, many people don't know. And in fact, one may ask, how participatory are Gambians with regards to the national budget? You understand? So I think these are things that really need to be very clear, and I think the NCCE is not doing what they are supposed to do. People are not educated to their rights. They don't know their civic rights at some extent. It's only few, maybe few who are very, very much active into youth work, into participating in such things like this. But other than that, people hardly know. I think we have good policies in this country, but implementing these policies is a problem. Most of these senior officials will just do what they want to do, because they know at the end of the day, nothing will come out of it. If you look at the budget reports that have been happening, and you see ministers like our colleague says here, you go to the National Assembly, the fisheries minister, what did he say the last time? The agreement between Gambia and Senegal, that fishing agreement, was not legal.
Yes.
And having of us is talking about it. Do we even do follow-ups to see how far are they gone with regards to that investigation? And he was asked to bring back the document. What did he say? The document is expired. They're not bringing it back unless they renew it again. So what is he telling us?
We really want to know what is in the document. It's not about it being expired or not. But are they transparent to us? Are they telling us the truth? Are we citizens even asking the questions? So I think these are issues. We need to change our attitude towards some of these things if we really want to get this government, this country to the level that we want it to be. Because when we talk about having good people like maybe competent members at the National Assembly. But I think that is not enough. We need to hold these people to account. How many of us engage our National Assembly members with regard to some of these issues? If they come back to us, how many of them will even convey a meeting? Do they even have committees in their constituencies? So these are things I think we really need to ask. We need to engage our National Assembly members. Just having the competence is not enough. Because some of them are really competent, but they are carried away with some of the issues. But do we retract them as citizens? Do we talk to them? These are things I think we really need to look at, and we make sure that some of these people are really put into tax and put on check and balance. Thank you.
Please, again, make it stop. You also raise your hand, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, 30 seconds. I'll give you just 30 seconds. Yeah.
Make it 1 minute.
Just very short.
1 minute, yeah.
30 seconds, please. So we because there are others waiting.
Yeah. Okay. Since I have only 30 seconds, I don't need to introduce myself as to the name of where I
You can
came from.
introduce yourself, please.
Right. So I have 40 seconds. My name is Esa Sane, Honorable, a member of the National Youth Parliament and the Speaker for KMU Parliament. I have 3 comments, but I will select one, and which is what Omar Diba has highlighted during his deliberation. I believe it is very important for us to advocate for the formulation of the Anti-Corruption Commission into this country, because it will go a long way in the implementation of a lot of recommendations that have been coming from civil organizations, a lot of recommendations that are coming from the various commissions that have been established in this country. And I believe the formation of the Anti-Corruption Commission is not only going to fast-track the implementation of the recommendations of the National Audit Office, but also help in a long way to curb the problems of corruption in this country. So let's try to advocate for the formation of this particular commission.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, when you have opportunity before, please let me just allow him just 30 seconds as well. Quickly, please. We want to wrap up.
Okay, I'm Ushinuba, like we have one problem in this country. Like, I want to add this contribution. Like, we the people, we have to change our habits towards these developments, especially like the institutions. You know what something Mr. Jack, I think, the procurement officer, what he said. Like, they'll act, but some people will be there. I think this. Some people will be there. They will try to act on the corruptions, but people will be there fighting, telling them that, you are the one who's going towards this, or you are the one who is standing, or you are the one who's the brave person.
Yeah.
And government also should not interfere in institutions that are trying to control or trying to see the better things of the country to go forward. So this is our problem. And we Gambians, we have to also change our habits towards development. Because when somebody is trying to develop, someone is trying to, oversight the other things.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's about input. From procurement, I'm also going to give you 30 seconds, then give 30 seconds to Farmaja. Then Anita can give us the closing remark, please. Please make it very short.
Okay, I will try to make it very short. When we started this session, all I hear is audit reports. But I don't know if you guys are aware that even GPP have reports that are taken to Parliament. I'll use this word that they always say. They said GPP are toothless dogs. The reason they said GPP are toothless dogs. Toothless bulldogs. Because we generate a report, take it to National Assembly. At the end of the day, the people that are found wanting will not end up be taken to anywhere. And
just a quick question, there's a compliance board,
the compliance review, the compliance
complaint review board.
Review board is different from that. That's where the suppliers go for their complaints. If this is
no compliance board on the GPA.
no.
We have compliance department.
There's a compliance department. Yeah, the compliance department does the audit and then take it to the National Assembly to read it out. At the end of the day, there are people that are found wanting or institutions that are found wanting, but at the end of the day, nothing is done.
So that's the area that I want to emphasize on. Working towards amending the GPA so that the GPA could have the power that it needs. So that there could be compliance number one, GPA can also assist, when they prepare their report and find for the people wanting, they can make sure through the compliance authority or the compliance department, they can make sure that it's accountability. So I think that is super important, and that's where we are coming from. That the GPA needs the independence and power that it deserves.
I think you are right. Right now, GPPA, we have a new bill, 2020 bill, is at the parliament right now. The members are looking at it at the moment, so that GPPA can have that independence that we need, so that we can free from interference and the like. So definitely, I think that point is good. Yeah, thank you. Obviously.
We have the questions where we have Anita, maybe you can go forward and give us the closing
from that gentleman mentioning NCCE, maybe in future, maybe if they can be invited, NCCE, and also I'm not speaking for them, but being their auditors for some time now, although I've not been involved in the field recently, but their budget is very minimal, because when it comes to dissemination, it's expensive. It's very, very expensive, and most of the programs they are being financed by UNDP, and UNDP, they don't have interest in that, in budget, so they cannot. So maybe some of these institutions is about trying to find the root causes of what they, not that they don't want to, but because of, financially they are constrained, or in terms of staffing, like even GPPA, in terms of staffing they are constrained, because it's like they didn't plan for sustainability when they are being assisted by the World Bank. But when they pull out, that's why they are struggling now. Even to perform compliance review now, they are not. Very few institutions are being reviewed. So because of they don't have the number as well. So it's like these are some of the root causes. I just want to.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. I think it is also significant importance. Anita, can you just give us the closing remark, and I think Fanta or Ayasira. You guys have to see one of those two. Anita, you can come forward. Anita is the program manager of Gambia Participation, and she will be closing this event for us.
Hello everyone. Once again, we just want to say thank you on behalf of Gambia Participate. We all know that some of us are actually very busy, but out of your busy schedules, you took time to come here today. And this just shows how some of us are really dedicated to this cause. And something that I would just want you to take along is whatever that we have discussed here can be shared with your partners. I mean, it makes it easier so that others in your different departments and organizations can get to actually what's happening. And I am also pleading with all of us to take the matter of budget, knowledge, at least let us have a clue of what's happening when it comes to our budget. And once again, thank you very much, and wishing you all safe journey back to your different destinations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. I shouldn't say anything after that.